Hi, welcome to my channel. My name's Handstand Dan, and today we are finding our introduction into arm balances and inversions. Figured I'd start off with one of yoga's most popular poses. What everybody loves to start working on when it comes to finding their arm balances is Bakasana, or as you might like to call it, crow pose. So come on in and join me as we start to develop an understanding of balancing onto our fingers and our hands. Okay, so what you might need for today is a yoga block, possibly even two. I would suggest having two. If you don't have a yoga block, it's okay. You can use a book, you can use a pillow. I have a secondary yoga mat here as a little safety net. I'll explain that in just a moment. But to get started, let's come on into a yogi squat. So you're going to come to squatting, having the legs out just about a hip width distance, maybe slightly wider. Toes are pointing out. So there's two variations to a crow pose. There's frog pose and there's crow pose. For very beginners, a lot of people would suggest doing frog pose, which is planting the hands down. Right? We take the hips up. If you are familiar with crow pose, what's going to happen is that the knees are going to place outside of your triceps, the back of your arms, and then you're going to shift the weight forward and chill here. Maybe one foot comes off the ground, maybe both. Now, the issue with that pose is that there's not a lot of leeway or room to advance with the pose. So I want to teach you the proper crow pose. That way, as you start to work into your crow and you get comfortable with it, I'm going to give you room for advancement with the posture. So if you're looking for modifications and advancements to crow pose, just kind of skip on ahead towards the end of this video. But to get started, let's do a little crow pose here. So coming into the squatted position, what we're working on here is a lot of people think that crow pose entails that you need a really, really strong chest and upper body, which honestly, that's what I thought at the beginning, but you would be mistaken. What you really need is a strong core, and then you also need open and flexible hips. That's where this pose is going to stem from. So what we are working towards is from our squat, palms come down, coming up onto the tippy toes here. That way you can get your knees as high up into your triceps. Maybe they can even get all the way up into the armpits. Now from there, you're not trying to lean the chest or lean your head downwards and look towards the back wall behind you. Instead, all we're trying to do is lean forward. We're not leaning forward and then down. It's just leaning forward with the chest. So maybe as you're working into this crow, really trying to squeeze everything in. Knees, squeeze into triceps. Triceps, squeeze into knees. The more you squeeze, the more lift you'll create. If you take a minute to notice, I'm going to take a crow pose without activating any of my muscles. So as I bring the knees up, I'm going to shift forward. And I can get into a crow pose only because I'm strong enough with my own body that I can work into this. But then you'll notice, watch what happens when I start to squeeze in my muscles. Ready? 3, 2, 1, squeeze. Look at that lift difference right there, right? So that's kind of crow pose. Now, if you are like, I can't get a crow pose, I've been struggling with this for months, what kind of little modifications can I make to this pose, right? Well, to start off, maybe if you're really close enough, you can go knees into the triceps, just like a normal crow, and then one foot maybe comes off the mat. And then maybe you play around with both feet coming off, or just switching out, switching the legs, lifting one at a time, taking what works for you. Now, if that is still not within your practice, it's all good. Other differences we can make. We can use a yoga block or two. What you can do is place your feet down onto the yoga block, as so. Now, I would suggest having two behind you. I only have one. I can't seem to find where my other yoga block is. Oh boy. But anyway, so coming into the crow pose, knees into the triceps. From here, this requires just a little bit less strength to get into the posture. So we're really squeezing through the core here, which means that you're trying to lengthen the tailbone down. Because if you think about it, the more we lengthen the upper back, the back half of our body, the more it's going to require us to squeeze the front half. So we're squeezing through those abdominals. So feel free to use the yoga block here as you shift weight over. This is going to require a lot less strength to lift the toes, and then you can always just plant back down. And what I tend to see a lot with people is that they're afraid that they're going to fall face first out in front of them. So feel free to place a block out in front of you. I have the yoga mat here. So as I come into crow and I start to shift forward, instead of bring that head down, remember, leaning forward, gaze is going out in front of you. And if you fall forward, just remember, whoop, boom. I'm hitting the mat, I'm hitting the block, whatever it is that works for you, okay? So just finding rooms, or just finding room for you to play around with this. Remember that, there's always a different variation that you can take, and I'm going to give you an alternate variation for modifying this if you're like, I still can't get a crow pose, I don't understand, why is my body not getting to this position? Don't worry, just wait till the end for that one, okay? Our next little variation that we're going to try here is when you start to get into crow, there's room for advancement here. If you want to make it a little bit more challenging, or if you're in a yoga practice and you kind of want to just find rooms to advance it a little bit, what you'll do, come into crow, knees into the triceps, squeeze it all in, activating through the muscles, lengthening the lower back, tailbone down towards the earth, and then maybe one leg can go behind you. Oh, I'm struggling here today. So you can play around with one leg going back, and then maybe the other. Or you can also shoot back through your chaturanga. So if you want to go high to low plank from your crow pose, what you'll do is essentially squeezing through that core here. I'm going to shift my weight forward as I'm in crow pose. So as I'm in crow and I want to shoot my legs back, if I want to shoot the legs back, the chest needs to act as a counterbalance. So the chest will start to lean forward, and then boom, legs go back, upward facing dog, downward facing dog. Now, if you're looking for the next level of advancement, I'm going to just take a second here to breathe because this one is a little bit challenging. We're going to try for a crow pose to handstand, and then I'm going to come back to crow pose because what this is going to require is maybe a little bit more chest strength, so something to look towards in the future, or maybe you have it right now. We're going to give it a go. Here we go. Crow pose. From here, what's essential is we're trying to get those hips to lift. So I'm going to have a strong upper body here to stabilize myself. Then with an inhale, legs are going to start to lift, the pelvis and the hips are going to lift. Inhale, lifting up. And boom, there we go. Handstand. And then you can always lean the chest forward and start to bring those knees back down. Working back into your crow pose. Voila. It's as simple as that, Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. All right, so we showed our advancements. We showed some modifications. Now, if you're feeling, man, I have no idea how he's doing any of this. Like, I can't even come close to a crow pose. Here's where you can modify, all right? Come on down to the back. Once you're down here, we have so much less weight required to hold a crow pose. So what are we going to do? We have to engage through the core for our crow, right? So bring the arms up and then take those knees into the triceps. Just holding here. What this is going to do is get those core muscles engaged, and then your mind and your body create this connection, so you just kind of develop a deeper understanding of holding your own crow pose, and that abdominals get just a little bit stronger. And if you want to play around with it, you can go one leg out, bring it back in, other leg out, bring it back in, or maybe both legs come in. What I really want you to focus on is squeezing those knees all the way up into your triceps to get those lower abdominals starting to engage, okay? So just remember, there's multiple variations. There's so many different things that you can play around with. And please feel free, like maybe you are really strong with your crow, take it on down to the back. There's always different ways that you can play around with each and every single one of these postures, whether it's an arm balance or a standing pose. So thank you so very much for joining me here today. If you have any comments or feedback, just drop a comment down below. Click the like button if you support this channel. Subscribe if you'd like to see any more of my videos. I put out beginner flows, powerful flows, inversions, all sorts of yoga related material. And please have a great day. Namaste.